When you count cases that you work on, you've helped investigate.
So she falls just like this?
You prosecuted.
Where were most of the wounds concentrated on the body of Jeffrey Wright?
We've seen some horrible things, but all those cases, what was done to Tanisha, I don't think I've ever seen another one like that. This case revealed the depths of human darkness, pure evil on earth. And the worst part about it was that it wasn't random. It was someone she knew. And her family, we watched them go through it because they thought nobody cared. Awful.
Even if she is dead, let me know so I can go and get her and bring her home.
To tell a mom their baby was dead, I can still see her face.
Half light, half me, on the other side.
Oh, this is my favorite.
4-part harmony.
4-part harmony.
4-part for life.
Yes. I met Tanisha in the 5th grade. We were just instant friends. We were in like the varsity choir in high school.
She was Mighty Woman. She was small, but her voice had some power. You knew not to play with her.
Yeah. And this was like the time when Destiny's Child was coming up. So we're from Houston. They're singing. We're like, okay, we can do what
It's
they're
a girl
doing.
group,
So like,
yes.
we were ready to be the next group. It was really fun.
Tanisha had a lot of things to look forward to in life because of all the different talents that she had. She was very smart. She loved school, loved to sing, and she loved to smile and make others smile.
Tanisha was very driven. Academics were #1. And our junior year, she won a $40,000 scholarship, and she was able to go to Texas A&M. We were sad we were gonna leave each other, but we knew we'll be back. It's time to go change the world.
Yeah.
Tanisha did the top 3% of her class, cum laude, and that's how she was getting into college. She was so looking forward to go to A&M. She had a bright future, and I just looked forward to seeing it.
It's spring break 2007.
We were planning to do something on the weekend together.
The last time I talked to her was on Wednesday.
But we didn't get that response on Thursday.
On Friday, Tanisha's still not answering her phone. Like, that just didn't make sense. She's an over-communicator. She would not go off on her own without letting somebody know where she went. Clearly, something was wrong.
My mom was like, I think I should call the cops. I was like, yeah, let's call the cops. And what they did was tell my mom, call back in a few days. She's probably just on spring break and she just wants some time away from her family. And we kept telling them, no, that's not Tanisha. She's the opposite of that.
I was bothered that the police didn't take it seriously.
She's not a troubled teen. We felt like there needed to be some kind of sense of urgency.
We're like, we need to find her now.
Something needs to be done.
Something is up.
Yeah.
Houston, the city is huge. Covering crime, I was fascinated with missing people because there were just so many, but not all of them were newsworthy. A lot of them were runaways. And so the police do say, wait a couple of days.
I think that's an old rule. When you hear that wait 48 to 72 hours, it's because you don't have the resources to throw at it right away. And a lot of times that does solve the problem because they do come home. But you can appreciate how a family feels because to them it's the most important thing in the world. So I'm sure families are always frustrated at the way they think no one is responding properly.
On Friday, we were still calling her phone. Saturday came, nothing. Sunday came, it's like, okay, we need people out there searching. Like, we were just trying to figure out the next steps.
The cops weren't doing anything, and we know time is of the essence. My mom, my entire family, we're all into crime shows. So we know after the first 24, 48 hours, there's a problem, something's wrong.
Hospitals are getting called, even the jail getting called, any friends or family members, any college mates. And then Monday morning, Tanisha doesn't show up to her college classes. She's not at Texas A&M. The alarms are really firing off.
Tanisha's family held a vigil on that Monday after she went missing, and they held it at the church.
Thankfully, the community came out, but now it's on the police. So now it's their job to find her.
Working in missing persons, at any one time on my desk, there'd be between 60 and 100 cases open. That particular morning, I was contacted by my supervisor who said, we got a missing persons on the northwest side of Harris County, and there's a lot of people at a Lutheran church passing out flyers. I need you to go out there and see what's what. When I pulled up to the parking lot, several people approached me. They had a lot of things that they wanted the law enforcement to do because they have, over the 3 or 4 days prior to me getting there, doing their own investigation. I'm out talking to Tanisha's cousin. She said she'd been trying to call Timothy Shepard, Tanisha's ex-boyfriend. According to them, Tanisha was last seen on Thursday at his apartment that's actually down the street from the church. First thing I do is I go to the apartment complex. I knock, nobody was home. I speak to the manager. She goes, oh my goodness, there was a fire there 2 days ago. Not only was there a fire, talked to another neighbor. They tell me that they heard shots, gunshots, a couple of nights ago in the woods close to that apartment. So talking to the fireman about the fire is put on the back burner until I can figure out what's in the woods. I call a couple of K-9 deputies. When they get there, we walk across the street from the apartment complex in a woody area. Deputies were saying, oh yeah, there's something dead out there. They use cadaver dogs and they can smell that scent. So we get into the wood line about 20 feet and we smell death.
He told me that he was talking to the suspect. Suspect? That's interesting.
My two main goals were, one, find what happened to Tanisha Stewart. Two, help protect Timothy Shepard from cops who may be intimidating this brother to give them something he does not have.
Tanisha's family said she was last seen with her ex-boyfriend, Timothy Shepard. The neighbors at his apartment tell me that they heard gunshots a couple of nights ago across the street from the apartment complex. As a missing persons investigator, my goal is to always find them alive, but the K-9 just alerted on the smell. And about 150 yards into the woods, they found a dead animal. It's relief that it's not her, so now I need to keep searching.
Tanisha met Timothy Shepard working at a pizza restaurant. We found out later on that there was an 8-year age difference between the two of them. You know, I didn't like that part. But Tanisha was so drawn to him, and not just Tanisha, my younger siblings and my mom as well. My mom accepted him as another son into the family.
Tanisha and Tim were still together as Tanisha was going to Texas A&M.
They were trying to make the long distance relationship work, but she was like, I'm not letting nothing stop me, especially after the scholarship. So that's when they just kind of like took the break.
In college, Tanisha met a new guy. She really liked him. He was a breath of fresh air. He made her laugh. He was her age.
She was still in love with Tim, but she just knew she wanted better. Like, she was learning, okay, I just want to have fun and do what I want to do, and that's what she was really enjoying.
Maybe she was having a romantic weekend, but she still would respond to your phone call or message at some point.
You have a young lady who's gone missing and you want to figure out where she is. You've already talked to her girlfriends. The most important people to talk to next are going to be any men she's involved with and talk to them about what they know when they saw her last. You want to pick their brains about everything there is to know about Tanisha to try and figure out where she is.
The smell in the woods turned out to be nothing, so I go back to the church. I go to my car and I start making phone calls to Ponderosa, which is a volunteer fire department here in Harris County. Talk to one of the firemen that made the scene, Timothy Shepard's apartment. Firemen and policemen, we have this relationship where we help each other all the time, so he was just telling me what happened. He said, when we get there, it was bad smoke all around the complex, but Timothy Shepard wouldn't open the door. But I mean, if something's on fire, you know you're gonna open the door. So they beat and beat and beat. And he said that there was a deputy showed up in case they need, scene security while they're fighting the fire. And he said, deputy finally told him to open the door, and he opened the door. They went to the patio, put the fires out. And I said, so what was cooking? He goes, just meat. The fireman tells me they searched the apartment. He goes, when they got into the bathroom, he noticed in the bathtub that there was a lot of meat that he was barbecuing covered in ice. And I was like, what kind of meat are you talking about? I mean, that's unusual for somebody to fill the bathtub up with meat. Was it ribs, chicken? He goes, it's hard to say, but it wasn't sausage, maybe ribs. Did you ask him what kind of meat it was or what he's doing? He goes, no, we just put the fire out and left. It didn't leave me with a final answer that it was just a fire. It left me with more questions than I had when I got there. But at that point, Tanisha's cousin comes up to me in a panic. She's got a phone she's holding up, and she goes, it's him. It's Tim on the phone. So I took the phone and talked to him. I said, where are you at right now? He goes, I'll tell you what, I'll just come to where you are. You gonna come to the church where I'm at right now? He goes, yeah. While I'm waiting. So he gets out of the car, calmly walks up to me like, I'm Timothy. I said, there's too many people out here, man. Just hop in the back seat of my car. I just wanted to get him secured in my car. It wasn't short, maybe 5-10 minutes before homicide got there. Off they went to homicide division to interview him.
My name is Sidney Miller. I'm a Harris County Sheriff's Office homicide investigator. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 32 years. I've been in homicide for 22 years. In homicide, it's a dedicated job. It's a calling for a lot of people. In my 22-year career, robberies and things like that, those are things that can be replaced. Can't replace a life. This was a 19-year-old kid that had been missing, and I ended up interviewing Timothy Shepard. He was very cooperative. He did see Tanisha on March 15th. He did admit to picking her up about 4 or 5 in the morning. As they're driving back to his apartment, she gets a phone call from the new guy that she had met from college. Timothy asked her, well, why is he calling you this time in the morning? And she just kind of shrugged him off. He claimed that he confronted Tanisha again. She got upset, and she just left the apartment on her own. And that was the last time he saw her. We had nothing to say this was a lie. But so when we found out she had left on foot, that just opened up another possibility of, could she have been abducted?
We live in Houston, Harris County. Horrible crimes happen there, and they happen sometimes randomly, and they are committed by strangers. So it could be a stranger, it could be random, but the odds of that are a lot less than it being somebody that she knew.
I talked to her before she was gonna meet Tim. And I was like, okay, what about Tim? He's supposed to be done, but she's like, well, I'm just ending it before I go back to school. It's just I want to make peace with it and be through.
I'm thinking, Tanisha doesn't walk anywhere. Maybe Tim drove her somewhere and left her, and she's without a phone, and she can't get in touch with anybody.
While Shepard is at our offices to give us a statement, he had given written consent for us to go and look into his apartment. Tanisha had been missing for 5 days. When I first opened the door, there was this smell of fresh paint. I noticed that the carpeting looked like bleach stains. I've been doing this long enough to know that that's an indication that someone is probably trying to hide something. As you walk further into the apartment, there was a bathroom, looked like it had just been recently cleaned. Ammonia bottles, bleach, and things like that. And there next to the tub, it looked like it had been mopped. This was really strange, and to me it was obviously a clue. When I got to Timothy Shepard's apartment, we found a lot of things that looked suspicious. Our crime scene CSU person did some swabbing for DNA that we submitted for analysis, but there wasn't enough to hold him on or accuse him of anything. We didn't want to jump the gun. This was early on in the investigation, and we knew we had a lot of people to talk to and some more investigating to do, so Shepard was free to leave. I started canvassing Shepard's apartment complex. Old-fashioned police work. You know, you're knocking on doors and talking to people. One of Shepard's neighbors talked about hearing some type of pounding, and he heard the garbage disposal just constantly running. A friend of Shepard's who lived downstairs had confronted Shepard about him barbecuing and had asked for some barbecue, and then Shepard wouldn't give him any barbecue, and he just thought that that was strange. We speak to several neighbors about the smell. One talked about how it smelled like a dead possum. Something wasn't quite right about it. But at this point, I can't talk to Tanisha's family and explain to them things that we found inside the apartment. We still had an investigation going.
I think what people don't realize is that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And law enforcement doesn't always go out talking about all of it for lots of different reasons. So you have a family that doesn't know everything yet, and the lack of communication, sometimes for a good reason. You don't ever want to put your whole case out there. There's nothing to be gained by that.
Nobody have seen or heard from her. Something's going on. Something is wrong. We're so many days out. How can I get more people involved to look for my sister? And then I thought, Quanell X is always on the news.
We'd see him on TV representing families, any type of social injustice, to be a voice for those who aren't always heard.
Something's happened to a family member, whatever it is, I know he loves the publicity, he gets camera time.
Quanell X typically has his ear to the community, whether it's police brutality, whether it's police are looking for somebody. A lot of people don't trust investigations, and they need someone to reach out to.
I got a phone call from Tanisha Stewart's sister saying, Quanell, law enforcement is not telling us nothing. If anybody can find my sister, it's you. But Timothy Shepard's cousin called me too, saying, my cousin needs your help. He put him on the phone, said, brother, where are you? He told me at the apartment. My two main goals were, one, find what happened to Tanisha Stewart. Two, help protect Timothy Shepard from cops who may be overzealous, may be racist, and may be intimidating this brother to give them something he does not have.
Quanell X wasn't a fan of law enforcement. And every time I saw him on the news, he was always slamming us and criticizing us. And from all that I heard him say, we could never do anything right.
I've never been seen as a friend of law enforcement. At times, it could be cordial, but it's always tension there because there's no trust.
Quanell was walking two paths. On one hand, wanted to make sure Timothy Shepard was getting all of his rights, and on the other hand, he appreciated this was a wonderful Black female that had a family that needed his help too. I remember thinking, how are you going to walk this plank here?
Quanell showed up the next day, and we both went over to Timothy's apartment. I was going to go up there with him. He was like, no, stay here. Let me talk to him one-on-one. Let me do my thing.
Walked up to him, how you doing, brother? Embraced him. I said, brother, you all right? And he said, no, not really. Brother, did they harm you? I said, I know law enforcement had you in their custody for a while. He said, no. They just kept trying to get me to confess. We go into the apartment. I could see fingerprint dust, residue on the walls, and looked like law enforcement had been in there dusting and investigating the apartment. And I could see the luminol that they had been using in the bathroom. There was luminol stains everywhere in the bathroom. He started sweating. And I said, brother, tell me the truth. There was luminol stains everywhere in the bathroom. I said, brother, tell me the truth. Do you know what happened to this girl? And he went. And that's when I knew.
Quanell came back down. I mean, it looked like he had saw a ghost. I'm like, okay, Timothy said something. And he was like, he did confess. Your sister is gone. It's not supposed to be this way. We had come so far. It's not supposed to end like this. We worked too hard to overcome for it to end like this. What was all that work for? We let evil in, and this is what happens. She deserved more.
And I took my cell phone and I started blowing up a reporter named Jeff McShann. I didn't trust calling law enforcement first because we had such a volatile relationship.
And he told me to meet him at a certain intersection, and he told me that he was talking to the suspect. Suspect? That's interesting.
I said, Jeff, who's the lead investigator? Get them to the apartment complex immediately. Get them here.
Quanell's talking to Shepard. He indicated he wanted to show us where Tanisha's body was. I just felt dejected because when you're talking about bodies, that don't mean that they're alive. We end up going over to an apartment complex on Ella Boulevard called the Polo Club. It's 3 to 4 miles from where Shepard lives.
We followed behind Quanell X and Timothy Shepard because I knew he killed her. He's going to take her where he put her body.
Eventually, we pull over. There was a dumpster, and the suspect got out. Quanell put his arm around the suspect.
He was very, very emotional. I kept saying, brother, it's going to be all right. She can't rest, brother, until you bring closure to this. He said, that's where I put her.
He's pointing towards the dumpster.
And I thought, oh my gosh, this is where he dumped her body.
We all walk over towards the dumpster at the same time. We look inside. It's empty.
She's not in there.
At that point, I instantly Mirandized and put him in handcuffs.
The trash had already been picked up. Her body most likely was at the landfill.
Yes, she's gone. Yes, we're hurting about that. But there's a different pain that you feel when your loved one is killed and you don't have a body to bury. It's still an open wound.
After Shepard was Mirandized, we had made arrangements to have him transported to our homicide office. Quanell had arranged for him to have a lawyer present.
I had my own lawyers meet me there for a reason. I wanted to make sure that he would be protected, and I just didn't trust the cops.
Quanell wasn't just an activist anymore. He's now a witness. There was a conflict of interest there at that point.
I got a call at night asking me to come down to Lockwood, where the homicide was, to mediate between Timothy Shepard, Quanell X, homicide, and the 2 lawyers that were coming down to Lockwood to represent Timothy Shepard, when we all realized that they were also Quanell X's lawyers, so they can't be both. Quanell X became a fact witness to the specifics of what Timothy Shepard had to say about what happened. He became a witness for the prosecution, which I'm pretty sure he never anticipated happening.
Kelly Siegler felt there was enough probable cause to charge Timothy Shepard. In the interview room, he said, I want to give you my statement. I said, well, you've asked for a lawyer. At this point, I can't talk to you. He said, well, I want to talk to you without a lawyer present.
He just told me, man, you just tell the truth. Clear your conscience. And I left.
This is your opportunity to explain your side of the story.
So that night on the 12th, she spent the night at my house.
Shepard tells me about 4 a.m, Tanisha, she gets a phone call from this new guy that she had been dating from college.
We was always together. She always stayed at my house until she went back off to college.
He tries to address this new guy that she had met again, and that's when the argument ensued.
I had the knife on my end table. She picked it up. She swung it.
And then he took his right hand and he put it around her throat. And he said he just started squeezing.
That's when I just snapped and I know I had to choke her.
Next thing he knows, she's on the floor, he's leaning over, and she's not breathing. When I was talking to him, it was just this look that he had. He was reliving this whole thing all over again. He said he thought about how the police could track him, so now he wants to cover his tracks.
And then you drove to the Polo Club on Ella? You that one? And you placed inside the trash dumps?
Being totally true, I still had my doubts about everything. Something just didn't feel quite right about it. You don't get 100% confessions from people. We got this 80-20 rule. 80% of it's true and the other 20 is not. Something that could potentially be worse. We found out that there was a landfill in the southern part of Harris County that dumpster would have been dumped there.
The dump is over 500 acres. They could search for months and might not find anything.
What do you mean that you're not going to search for my sister's body in the landfill, that it costs too much money? Would it cost too much if there was your daughter out there? What most African-American women feel, we're the least respected and the least protected.
There's always that comparison, you know. What if she were white? What if she came from a more affluent neighborhood? Would the police or the Harris County investigators act differently?
If it was my son or daughter that was missing, I wouldn't care what law enforcement was doing. It still wouldn't be fast enough for me. But as an investigator, you have to learn to tune that stuff out and do your job. We still hadn't found Tanisha. We still hadn't found her body. So we still had to do some more investigating to proof up our case. We go back out to Shepard's apartment, and one of the investigators sees what looks like charred bone on the ground of the apartment below Shepard's. Also, we see what looks like burnt hair. And then we checked the garbage disposal. We found charred items, bones, teeth, and the enamel that was found inside the garbage disposal was consistent with the DNA from Tanisha. We have evidence to believe that she was cut up, dismembered, and burned.
I'm the one that had to go tell Tanisha's mom why there didn't need to be a landfill search. And I was in that apartment that day with 20 people and Quanell X, a room full of very angry people. And I'll never forget her mom sitting on the couch that day with a bunch of strong men standing around her. And I explained to her that we knew she wasn't in the landfill because we knew that she was dismembered and cut up inside Timothy's apartment. And her mom looked up at me and said, "Miss Kelly, are you telling me my baby's never coming home?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." To tell a mom their baby was dead. I mean, I walked out by myself and got in the car and drove away, crying. Just thinking, how do they survive this?
Not only are we grieving, it was the way that she was killed. How could you date somebody and all of a sudden you're cutting her up in the bathtub like it's nothing? It's not a human. That's so demonic. That's like an evil spirit. No, you're not gonna get away with this.
Timothy Shepard was charged with murder, so you're looking at a life sentence for your maximum punishment. When we filed the charges, the case could land in one of 22 different district courts, and it landed in the court where Marie Prim was the chief prosecutor assigned to the court, so it technically became her case. Marie Prim was one of the best chiefs that we had. She was very, very experienced. She was a nerd like me. I knew she was going to be prepared. I knew the family was going to love her. Timothy was represented by Chip Lewis, a very successful, well-known defense lawyer. As a prosecutor, you better have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed if he's going to be the defense lawyer that you're looking at across the courtroom.
I view myself solely as a mercenary. I am hired to provide the best defense that money can buy.
Chip isn't cheap. Later, I found out that Timothy Shepard's sister paid for Chip.
Chip Lewis had just been involved in the Robert Durst case in Galveston.
The jury find the defendant, Robert Durst, not guilty.
Somehow, they had made the jury believe that the dismembering of the body did not matter.
I do not need to like these criminals, but I will do the best job anybody can if my financial requirements are met. To throw out that confession with all the brouhaha, there was a natural foundation there from which to draw that this was an involuntary statement. He was denied counsel, etc.
There was a pretrial hearing, and Chip fought just as hard to try and get the statement thrown out, because in his mind, if he could get that statement thrown out, what a huge win for him as a defense lawyer. The only way to get it thrown out was to legally make the judge believe that it was coerced or he didn't get all of his rights read to him.
The impact of getting the statement excluded could have led to the suppression of more evidence, such as a search warrant for the house and the discovery of the remains, making the state's task of convicting him of the murder at all quite difficult.
Because it may have impacted the search warrant to go back inside the apartment, I could not let that happen. I fought, and the law was on our side. The judge denied their motion to suppress.
The judge followed the law, but as I said, you got to do what you got to do to preserve the client's rights and give them the best defense money can buy. So forward went the trial.
We began the trial by setting up the relationship between Timothy Shepard and Tanisha Stewart. He had been physically violent with her. She had shared that with her roommates at Texas A&M. The roommate gave us a bigger picture of what was going on. She said that Tanisha was having a very difficult time with Tim, that they were supposed to have been broken up, but that Tim would not leave her alone. He would even come up to A&M. He would try to get in her dorm room. He would find her and basically make her life miserable.
She would keep a lot of things from me because I'm the older sister. I'm going to call for backup. It's going to be a problem. I understand the situation that she was in. Having his hands around your throat, that's not a normal relationship. That's considered domestic violence, and it doesn't get better, it gets worse. She really thought that, I can break it off with him, we could just be friends, and I could go on the way to college and live my life. No.
Building up their past history was important for the jury to recognize, and it certainly showed me who Timothy Shepard was. He was a cold, callous person.
There was absolutely no evidence that Tanisha Stewart had been anything but a remarkable young lady and had no blemishes in her past that we could anyway exploit to create impression to the jury that she was aggressive and or that it's likely she attacked Tim Shepard. It was tricky.
I believe Mr. Lewis, although he fought the motion to suppress, he wanted Mr. Shepard's statement in evidence. I did not want to use that confession. Although Timothy says she ended up dead in his apartment, he says it's self-defense. It was all a bunch of BS.
I had the knife on my end table. She picked it up. She swung me.
It was Timothy's way of making himself look better than the reality was.
As the state did not put his confession on at that point in time, we had no way of really injecting the self-defense into the trial.
The defendant and his lawyer can't offer the statement themselves without taking the witness stand. If you're Chip Lewis, why in the world would you ever put Timothy Shepard on the stand? How is he going to explain any of it?
We start calling neighbors. Some of them testified to the burning of the smoking of the barbecue pit that seemed just abnormal and to go on and on and on. Some people said the smoke didn't smell quite right. The firefighter gave testimony that in the bathtub he saw what appeared to be a rack of ribs. And at no time did he ever conceive that that was the body of a young woman. The DNA analyst testified to it, finding Tanisha's DNA in the bone fragments, hair, and teeth that they found inside the apartment of Timothy Shepard. The forensic anthropologist said that there was a tool mark in the bone. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. Somebody had tried to cut that bone. As a mother, it was horrifying. Sadly, as a prosecutor, it gave me another piece of evidence.
At this point in the trial, Marie Prim has offered Tanisha's girlfriends to talk about her, how she went missing, the literal pieces of evidence of Tanisha's body. What still remains is what's going to happen with Quanell X.
The defense was saying he won't take the stand and tell what he knows because in the streets there's a no snitch policy. So we don't think he'll speak up about what he knows.
Everybody's waiting to hear what happens.
Calling Quanell X to the stand was kind of hold your breath moment. Is he even going to cooperate with us?
Marie Prim was praying that I would keep my word and that I would not take the fifth, that I would testify. But I gave my word that I would fight for justice for Tanisha Stewart.
It was extremely powerful in the room with him. His ability to make you feel what he observed, it was very powerful testimony.
The jury was out for just 4 hours, which in my lifetime is not very long. And the jury came back with a guilty verdict.
I felt in my heart that they're going to convict him. But don't get your hopes up yet. Let's see what the jury says, see how much time they get him and how much time he really has to serve. Is my sister going to get her justice that she deserves?
During the guilt phase of the trial, we didn't really get to talk about the self-defense claim, but in punishment, Timothy Shepard wanted to try to demonstrate how this happened.
It was pretty apparent Chip was trying to talk him out of it, but when it comes down to it, the defendant gets to make the call, and he wanted to testify, and Chip was stuck having to put him on the stand.
If Timothy Shepard was going to testify, I wanted him to show the jurors what he did to Tanisha.
So he was able to get from behind the witness stand and actually show Marie Prim how he grabbed Tanisha that night.
You could feel it in the courtroom when he put his hands around my neck. I think was powerful.
It is a product of excellent lawyering on the prosecution to get a defendant to show in front of the jury exactly what happened.
Timothy Shepard gave a confession. I was very surprised at the details that he gave me. He left to go get a saw to come dismember her body.
He talked about how he had taken some pliers to remove her teeth from her skull. He went through great lengths of trying to cover his tracks.
This is like some Jeffrey Dahmer type stuff.
When I said, and then you put her on the barbecue pit, he corrected me to tell me it was a smoker. That just showed how callous and cold of a human being he was. Why did he get rid of her body that way? So no one would ever find it, and he would never face the consequences for what he did.
They did not give him life, which was the maximum punishment. They gave him 99 years and a maximum fine.
Is it justice? No. She's still gone.
We who come from economically disadvantaged communities dream of a Tanisha Stewart because she could have been a light and a symbol to say to young African-American girls, in spite of, you still rise. We had lost someone of great significance.
There was a time when I thought I would never, ever have a conversation with Quanell X, that we would never be on the same side of the game. I opened my eyes, my heart, my mind, made me a better prosecutor.
It gave me hope that the relationship with my community, the Black community, and law enforcement could change for the common good of our community and our city.
I'm just sad that she didn't get to go be who she should be. Show us all.
She don't have anything. She's not here. She doesn't have any kids. She doesn't have any CDs out, music, no husband. She was right there. It was just beginning to take off. And it was snatched away. Because we didn't see the evil that lurked around us.
We want to think that we can see evil and spot it and thus avoid it. What I've learned in this job is that you can't ever see all the evil that there is in this world. If a man puts his hands on you one time, he's going to do it again. If you're dating someone like that, run. When you have a victim like Tanisha, everybody understands what's most important here. You come together and you unite to get justice for her. And that's what happened.